This video looks at audio channels. Now what we're looking at here is the recording that was done of an interview, and we have our composite video, and we've got two separate recordings in terms of audio. We can see these when we click down to our audio waveform. We've got our two signals, we've got two people talking. We can see our interviewer who was mic'd up with a wireless mic, a lapel mic, and we've got our interviewee who had the boom overhead. So you can see that the waveforms are very different, so these are obviously two very distinct audio signals that were recorded. Now if by default I just drag this down or drag this over onto the timeline, you'll see that Premiere is treating this as a stereo pair, it's called, a left and a right, and it's going to drop them into that audio 1 track. Now that might be fine if it was actually a stereo recorded with a stereo microphone, then yes, you might want to keep them together so that you can adjust the levels on both signals simultaneously. Oops, put that back in. Now, because I've recorded this in a particular way that I want to have my two recordings, or my two people, separated in the mix so that I can work on them independently, I need to change this into what's called a dual mono. And to do that, I'm going to need to modify the audio channels. So if I right click on that and go to modify audio channels, I have options on how these two channels are going to be brought down onto the timeline. Now the goal here for me is to have my interviewer in one track, my interviewee in the other track. So I need two tracks, and I want to have just the one waveform for each in each track. So I'll select mono, click OK, and just drag that back out now. And what you'll see is that I now have my two, I'll just get a bit more room there. I've got my two people talking still, and they are each in a track of their own now, which means that I can adjust their levels independently, and there's other things that I can do to those that I'll come to in a later video. But for the moment, that's kind of job done in terms of having two mono recordings, each one in its own track. Now if I play that,
well, I've been
you look at the waveform, it sounds like both people are talking out over both channels, and that is technically correct, because when I create a mono mix, I have each one panned center. If I want, on the other hand, to have one person talking and only coming out on one headphone, or one speaker, and the other person coming out on just the other speaker, as if they were on either side of the listener's head, for example, then I can change the yellow bar here to represent the pan instead of the volume, and just separate those by dragging one up and one down. So if you look at the meters now, you'll see that I've got
Americans and different tourists,
two very different
in the town, so
waveforms there, or audio meter readings. I'll just go back to the... Okay, so you can see that she's coming out predominantly on the right speaker, whereas our interviewee is coming out predominantly on the left.
Putting up signs that